This is the continual evolution of the East Coast beat. In the shadows, in the company of the descendants of Cain, I sit in the midnight hour. Sometimes I sit until the sun rises. Sometimes I think of my past. Sometimes I think of my future. There is so much to say, but there is always silence. There is always eternal. But at 51, I know that I am less immortal than a mountain, less immortal even than a mountain stream. But in my life, have I searched for the glittering jewels? Have I not sweat for the emerald and jade? Did I not cross the deepest of the ocean for my pearl? Loose and lucid in the night, eager and hungry for another step. 30 years later, I wait to hear the echoes from the desert, from the river's edge. When I was about 19, I got divorced. I got back from the desert. I realized that being married was not what I wanted. Being married was part of the American dream that I had bought into. I thought that what I wanted was a house and a white picket fence and grandkids and two dogs and a cat and a bird. But I came to realize quite easily that after I got divorced, that what I wanted was midnight train rides to foreign cities where I would not understand a single word of what most of the because they weren't in certain parts of Germany they don't even speak German or they'll speak their local dialect. So I'd be places where I wouldn't understand a single word of what was being said. Um, and I felt comfortable. All week I was a soldier, I was a cook. I woke up at 4:15 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And I had to be at work at 5 and I'd work until a certain time, and then if we had to go to the motor pool, we'd go back and change into our BDUs and then go to the motor pool, and or if we had to do something else, like even as a cook, we would have to work until like 7, 8 o'clock at night. If you had the night shift, you'd start at 10:30 and you'd work until 8 to 9 o'clock at night, depending on how long it took for the kitchen to pass the night inspection. So, you go back to your place, and then like I said, you get off at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. You go back to your place, and then you're expected to be back on at 5 o'clock in the morning. And then that's how we would rotate. You would do one day in the morning from 5 to about 1, and the next day you would start at 10:30 and you would go until about 8 or 9. And then if you worked the weekend, you would go, I think it was 8 to 8 or 6 to 6. I think it was 8 to 8, something like that, or 7 to 7. I can't remember. But it was 12 hours. I remember specifically it was 12-hour shifts on the weekend. And we got every other weekend off. And like I said, during that every other weekend off, I had been to local cities. I would take the train to nearby cities where U.S. soldiers lived, so I knew it was very friendly to U.S. soldiers. Very. I'm like I said, I like the stone architecture. I liked cobblestone roads. I liked statues in the archways. I like that. And then at the same time, I liked having enough money to go to, the nice upscale parts of town and to see, oh, like I remember one time I was in one part of a German city and I was looking at a shirt and the shirt was uh 300 plus dollars. The pants were 600 or marks. The shirt was 370 marks. The pants were 680 marks. The boots were 215, and the jacket was, I don't even know how much the jacket was. And it was just one outfit. One day would have cost you 2,000 marks, which was over $1,000 because the exchange rate was 1 to 1.7. So it was almost twice, we get 1.7 for each dollar. So, that outfit cost $1,000, $1,000 outfit just to walk out the door. That's not counting your underwear, your socks, your watch, your dress, your cologne, your aftershave, your haircut. So I'd walked into a very posh part of town, and I was looking at the clothes like, you know what, I I can see why I can see why that looks so good, because it's just black pair of slacks, white button up shirt, black um, jacket, black like blazer style jacket, you know, because if I didn't know how much it cost, I would know it cost money, but I wouldn't know how much. I would have to be able to shop like that to know, oh, that's a $600 pair of pants, I can't shop like that. But like I said, it was a very sophisticated look, and I could imagine, but like I said, that part of downtown, their downtown was very nice. I really liked it. You know what I'm saying? Very clean, very, very cold, very, just a lot of shade, a lot of thick glass buildings, a lot of stone walls. It was very nice. I liked it. At the same time, do I appreciate an abandoned warehouse full of graffiti? Yes, I do. You know what I'm saying? So, but where would I rather live? I don't know. Somewhere in between, log cabin maybe, I think would be nice. But at my age, I don't know if I want to live someplace where it really um, snows. So maybe someplace. Um, I mean, there's a couple places I've been that, if I won the lottery, I would go back and, be perfectly content living there. They got a good coffee shop. They got one or two places where I could eat. They got pizza place, and I'm within 50 miles of uh, city or a town that has local live music. I think and poetry. If I live in a town that has poetry readings or open mics, I'm pretty satisfied. Because realistically, that's what at my age, that's what I do, or that's what I did back when I had a car before I gave my car up. I would go to open mics, karaoke, um, singer songwriter nights. I'd go to poetry readings. When I was, I've been to a couple of book readings before by the author, and that's when I lived in university towns. The author would come to the university on a Thursday, and read from his book. That was pretty nice. But that's what I enjoyed doing. Like I said, there was a time when I liked, like I specifically remember, like I would walk into a certain club and I'd walk onto the dance floor, and then the lights would go off, and then the smoke machine would happen, and the bass would kick in, and I remember thinking, oh sweet, I like this. You know what I'm saying? And I remember one time I had some old friends. We used to work at a restaurant together here in and San Bernardino, and then they ended up in Encinitas, in the one in the United States, Encinitas or Ensenadas. I keep forgetting how to say it. And they ended up down there, and I went down there and visited them. And we went to a coffee shop that was like on the edge of a cliff, and you could see the ocean. And there was some, guy playing reggae on an acoustic guitar, and I got so high that night. I felt the breeze. It was beautiful. I've felt like that a couple times in my life, with and without weed. To be honest, there have been times in my life where I've not smoked, and I've just felt like this incredibly smooth flow where I knew time was still moving as it was, but I knew I was moving slower. I was like, oh man, like you're so heavy right now. Not tired heavy, but just heavy with the moment. And it seems like half the time there's always this warm breeze blowing on me. It's so good. And that's one reason why I smoke the green, because the green gets me there too. Maybe not all the way there, but like I said, it if it okay, if it's forecast that there's going to be 2 days of rain, I'm going to get me something to smoke, because if I'm going to be in my apartment for 2 days, I'm going to want to get at some point to boost myself a little bit, you know, out of just sitting on a cold day. And I'm gonna want to put reggae. I'm gonna want to put some reggae. Bob Marley, Peter Tosh. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna want to put some reggae on. I'm gonna want to dance to it. Before the rains come, I'm gonna make sure that I have coffee. I'm gonna make sure that I have cigars to smoke. I'm gonna make sure that I have something to cook. Especially if it's supposed to be a super hard rain, I'll want to cook something specifically on that day. I don't know. It's just fun for me to cook on rainy days. But yeah, I definitely like green on those days. Not to say that I won't smoke any day. Like if anybody of my old friends were to ever just stop by, hey man, you want to smoke for the next 2 hours and just listen to YouTube music? You get to fuck with the radio. Yeah, I'm down for that. I mean, like I said, that's cool with me. But when I originally first started smoking the herb, it took me to such a higher level. And back then, I was still reading books about Buddhism. I was still reading the Tao Te Ching. I was still reading books about biology. I was still reading books about how to program. I was in community college when I was smoking weed when I first started, and I was earning my associate's degree. So I was learning computer coding, not coding, but I was learning how to use a computer, how to speak Spanish, how to write. I remember my first year in community college, I had this professor, and he was an older white guy, and even though he was a professor, he lived in the poorer part of town. But I guess he was trying to save up his money so he could retire, where he wanted, not live where he wanted. He wanted to retire where he wanted, I guess. But he would always wear Adidas tracksuit jackets. And I remember he kept writing on my English papers, I like your thoughts, but you need to subjugate them. And I kept thinking, I'm not going to subjugate my thoughts. And then like halfway through the class, I looked up subjugation as an English term, and it is subjugation. You can't just throw out wildness and expect other people to hear it with clarity. So you have to have a main thought going on, and then you add your little points to it. And then in the end, the story is told because there's been enough supporting your moral, I guess. Like, what's the moral of the story? What's the essence of the story? So you add your little character to it, and you add your little personality to it, but you still want to not just throw out a bunch of randomly unconnected things and try to call it conversation. So that's one of the things that I was learning how to do while I was smoking weed. I couldn't just sit around, hey man, this album's groovy. It's like, no, man, I had to write 5, 10 page papers. But like I said, he was the first professor and that kept saying, no, you need to learn how to subjugate. So after that, I started subjugating my papers, which meant I would say, okay, in the next, in the next, in the next couple of sentences, I'm going to um, put forward the concept that, the main character of the book was actually selfish. And this is why. First of all, the action that she took hurt other people. Secondly, it didn't help anybody. Third, it got her, um, even though she has to pay the consequences of her actions, it got her justice and she didn't have to suffer she didn't have to live her whole life out. Um, because it was a movie, it was part of that story was this uh, girl had let um, her tribe practice a tradition on them. And when she came to America, it was not practiced in America. And she felt at one point that she had been wronged. This is fictional, but she felt that at one point that she had been wronged by her tribe, so she went back and exacted revenge on the tribal lady that committed the tradition on her. And then she comes back to the States and they try her for that. And they say, you can't get away with that. And so it was a story about coming to, like, in back where she was from, their modern culture, was tribal, like very tribal, indigenous, almost tribal. And then when she came to the States, when she finally modernized, she felt that she had, well, part of the story was that she felt that she had been wrong. But my argument was, yeah, but she was selfish because when she went back and exacted revenge, she came back and she was arrested for it and actually executed for it. And she left behind a son and she left behind a husband, lover, however they call each other. And, I said that's very selfish. I mean, but that's as ancient as anything else. You're wounded, you wound back. Hurt people, hurt people. So, you know, but anyway, my teacher told me subjugate, subjugate. You have to make your thoughts support each other rather than confuse the listener. So, what was the point of what was the lesson of today? I sit in the midnight hour. Sometimes I sit till the sun rises. Sometimes I think of my past. Sometimes I think of my future. But there's always silence. I volunteer at a Department of Behavioral Clubhouse with homeless people. I'm not saying this about all homeless people because some of the homeless people do it right and they get housing programs and they get substance abuse programs and they get they get their life back. After being homeless for a couple of years, they realize that's not what they want out of life, or they've come to a certain agreement with their mental illness where they decide that they don't want to live that way and that they'll do what they have to do to get help so that they can get an apartment, take a shower every day, wear clean clothes. So, but like I said, some of the homeless people, I tell them they do certain things, they act certain ways, they respond certain ways, they make threats certain ways. And sometimes I tell them, hey, maybe that's why you're homeless, bro. Like, have you thought of that? Like, I don't tell it to them face to face. I tell it to them as they're walking away, flipping off the county worker after hoping that she has a miscarriage. There's a pregnant county worker. Um, had to kick a club member out for smoking weed, which is against the rules because he's came in smelling weed, probably had weed on him, and she had to kick him out. So as he's walking away, he flips her off and he says, "You fat bitch, I hope you have a miscarriage." And I said, maybe that's why you're homeless, bro. Maybe that's why, man, maybe that's why no one wants to help you, bro. Because the minute you don't do exactly what they say, you let them see that little part of you. And do I have that in me? I don't know. I hope not. I mean, I've been in the housing program for 10 years, so I mean, I know I can say some shit and I can get excited and raise my voice, but I hope I've never said anything like that, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, maybe that's why you're homeless, bro. You just had all the way to, for getting kicked out for smoking weed. I've seen the guy smoke the weed 2 feet in front of the door that says no weed on the door. You cannot bring in weed or guns or anything into this facility. And he's knocking on the door, smoking weed, passing it to somebody else. They can't kick us out, bro. I'm like, take a fucking shower, bro. They're not telling you can't smoke weed. You just can't come in here smelling like you were standing at the door smoking weed with a half of a smoke pipe in your pocket. You know what I'm saying? Like, be reasonable. It's still fucking county. It's still government. These people have to follow some kind of rules. You know what I'm saying? And you doing that and then talking like that does not make weed smokers come off as the best people in the world. Neither does it make homeless people come off as anything less than crazy, dangerous people that you don't want to trust. You know what I'm saying? But yet she chose to go to school and chose to sign up, chose to get a job with the county and chooses to take a shower, clean herself, and look pretty every day so that you can wish that upon her for doing her job. Maybe that's why you're homeless, bro. You know what I'm saying? And you know what? I said it when I wasn't crippled, and I'm saying it when I'm still half crippled. Maybe that's why you're homeless, bro. You know what I'm saying? Maybe because of my shit that I am is the reason why I can't open my hand or I have a lame walk now. Maybe because of who I am is why I live the way I live. But you know what? I know we're not supposed to cast judgment, bro. But shit like that, maybe that's why you're homeless. You know what I'm saying? The continual evolution of the East Coast beat. Like I said, I'm getting older and I'm getting weaker now. I don't want to be victimized, and I definitely don't want to be victimized as an ignorant hero trying to help somebody that didn't give a damn about me anyways. But like I said, at a certain point, if I see something happen, I'm still gonna have to. I hope I still do something. You know what I'm saying? I'm still going to have to say something, step forward, raise my hand, raise my voice, something. I don't have that, 800-pound punch that I used to have, but it's still me. half crippled, half lame, silver haired, skinny, 150 something pounds, it's still me. And there's still got to be parts of me that are willing to show up, when the moment arrives. Like I said, I've been proud of myself in the past. When I was younger, um, things would happen, and I tell myself, "Oh, you could have handled that better. You could have handled that harder. You could have handled that, more like a man." And then I realized, okay, well, maybe fighting a guy outside of a bar at 12:30 at night is not what I want to do, because he I don't know. People didn't treat me bad. Like I said, I've been to bars. I've been to dive bars. I've been to, biker clubhouses, and I've asked them, walked up to the DJ, "Hey man, play Freebird for me and my girl," you know what I'm saying? And he played the 16-minute version. What can I say? I mean, people have not treated me bad, as a man, but I've also, like I said, there are a lot of things I don't do as a man. A lot of ways I don't talk to women at bars, so that when their boyfriends finally show up, I don't have to answer, to that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know what I'm saying? And luckily, I've been like that my whole life. So I don't have a bunch of people still angry at me for something I did 30 years ago, so I can live in peace. So what is eternal? You know, like I said, at a certain point, when I wanted to make a change, I asked for to make the change. You know, can I become more like this? And I still find myself, oh, I can still do better. But I know that I'm more aligned now. And it's taken a lifetime. But journey of 10,000 miles begins with a single step. So, like I said, if there's something that you want to be out of life, move towards it. Get as close to it as you can. Dance with it. Breathe with it. Understand it. Know it. Then what else is there? The continual evolution of the East Coast beat.